Opportunities, the Future of Black Media. I'm George Nelson, political editor of the Business Journal and president of the Youngstown Press Club. On behalf of the Press Club, Youngstown State University's Anderson Program in Journalism, and YSU's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. I'd like to take a moment to especially thank President Trussell for being here this afternoon. The President and I go a long way back to when he was first joining the sidelines on Youngstown State's campus. I particularly want to thank our moderator and our panelists. It doesn't seem all that long ago that our Byrd and I were running around this campus as students. Ernie, doesn't seem that long. Ernie Brown, as an assistant regional editor at the Vindicator, called me several years ago when I was editor of YSU's yearbook and asked me if I'd be interested in interning at the Vindicator over the summer. Somehow I managed to hang up on him. Fortunately, he called back. As media outlets and as a society as a whole, we continue to grapple with racism and its horrific legacy. While we can celebrate the election of Barack Obama to the highest office in the land, and our current Vice President, Kamala Harris, not to mention the accomplishment of countless Black Americans in politics, the sciences, the arts, and other aspects of our society, every George Floyd and every Ahmaud Arbery serves as a fresh reminder of the centuries of injustice inflicted on Black Americans, even nearly 160 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. As we open this panel, consider this. Based on an analysis of nearly 100 Black-owned media outlets by the Center for Community Media at the City University of New York's Craig Newman Graduate School of Journalism during a 15-month period from March 2020 to May 2021, Black media published as much as 6 times more coverage than mainstream outlets on issues of importance to Black communities, including racism, health disparities, and voting access. The Why Black Media Matters Now report found that 1 in 4 articles of Black media mentioned racism or related issues, as compared with less than 1 in 10 mainstream media outlets. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Black media wrote nearly 5 times more on the disproportionate racial impact of the pandemic, and nearly twice as much on frontline and essential workers. Thank you again for being here this afternoon. Now please welcome our moderator, Art Byrd.
Again, welcome everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. On behalf of the Youngstown State Department Anderson Program in Journalism, also YSU's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Dr. Earnhardt, and also the Youngstown Press Club, I welcome you to our Obstacles Opportunity, the Future of Black Media panel discussion. I'm Arthur Byrd, I'm your moderator for this evening. I'm a former photojournalist for WFMJ, YSU graduate, and also I was a former instructor here, the history of motion pictures, and currently a Toastmaster, and also I do content. I have 3 podcasts, so I'm very glad to be here. And our goal here tonight is today is to show the importance of the Black presence in media, especially as information consumption has expanded through the creation of more news channels and also social media. So what opportunities and obstacles face Black media and its future, now and its future. Also, we want to get you involved. As you can see these right up here, I've seen those before. Does anyone know what these are? No? Okay, let me explain. These are actually microphones. We're going to play a little beach ball a little bit later on, and you'll be able to answer questions. So the discussion is 45 minutes. Really need your input. If there's some things that you have questions with, we have a great panel. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment. And also, to have your questions ready, I'll give you a point where I'll let you know as we're kind of finishing up what's going to be going on. And also, I'd like to do right now is to introduce our panelists. Malaynia Spiva is an Emmy Award-winning journalist at WFMJ. Currently, she is the morning reporter for WFMJ Today in WFMJ Weekend Today. Deane, co-anchor at WYTV for the 6, 7, and 11 p.m. newscast. And someone I've known for a very, very long time, Mr. Ernie Brown, was a former regional editor for the Vindicator, which was known as the Youngstown Vindicator. I was a paper boy, so I delivered the Youngstown Vindicator. The paper once was the 8th largest daily newspaper. He worked at the paper from 1986 to 2019. Ernie had a column unnamed, which he wrote about minority affairs that provided story events in the Black and Latino community with some opinion. So I want to welcome.
Ernie got a whole bio. I like Beyonce and long walks on the beach.
I read that, and I was going, yes, I like this guy. But I also have to add one thing, too, with Ernie. And maybe I'll add something else to yours, too. But Ernie was part of, if you've gone down by the Cavelli Center, the Handshake, he was part of that committee, the one with Jackie Robinson and George Shuba in downtown Youngstown. So we really appreciate it. He's still doing things for the community. We have a wonderful panel. We're going to really have a really, really good time. So I'd like to go ahead and start the question here, and anyone can kind of start. As you see Black media in the percentage, because the percentage of minorities or Blacks in the newsroom is at 5.4%. Do you see any time of that increasing at this point? I see your face. You want to go first?
You're asking, do I see it increasing anytime soon?
Increasing presence.
To be honest, I don't know if I see it increasing anytime soon. I think it's just a lot of different factors that come into play. You know, people want to become journalists and things like that, and of course the culture of newsrooms and stuff. But in my experience in newsrooms, I'm in my 3rd newsroom right now. I've always been in the minority, so I've never really experienced, you know, a diverse newsroom. I will say, when I was in Greenville, North Carolina, before I came here, my first time ever having a Black news director, a Black chief photographer, and a Black executive producer. And when I tell you that thing shocked me, I was like, y'all work here? And they were like, yeah. I said, y'all in charge? And they were like, yeah. I said, well, child. But it was good for me as a younger journalist at that time to see someone that looked like me in those kinds of positions, because there aren't that many, you know, news directors of color, whether it's Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. They're just not. And I was just like, wow. And it was very impactful, you know, for my career, and it encouraged me to keep going.
Did it have a certain kind of vibe to the newsroom that
Oh
you
yeah, vibe. Oh yeah, we were chill. We were cool, you know. And some days we even had to play a little Nicki Minaj, you know. But it was great. It was, you know, even for my colleagues who weren't Black, it was just everyone was very comfortable, and it was very easy to go to my managers during certain times in history that we've recently experienced and be like, you know, this is impacting me. How can I, you know, like help a brother out, literally. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, have you seen, is it a comfortable situation for you being in the newsroom at this point where, because you're out in the community, and you're in different spots all over the place. Has it been an acceptance, or have you had to endure anything that we don't see on television?
Hello?
Use mine.
Okay. I've been really blessed. Everywhere I go, I'm accepted, and it must be me.
It's a user error. Yeah. She gonna be okay, y'all. Okay, don't touch it no more. Don't touch it. There you go.
Oh, okay. No, I've been blessed. Everywhere I've been, I'm accepted, and I've been to Trump rallies, and I was accepted there too. You know, in some spaces you go in as a Black woman, and you just assume, you know, people, they're gonna look at me. I'm standing out like a sore thumb, but people, and I don't know if it has to do with this area or valley, people overlooking that I'm Black and that I give them like the place to go in the evening, their restaurants and stuff like that, and they just look at me as Malaynia. So I'm blessed to be able to say that, but I'm also aware that everyone, they don't get that same experience, you know? So I haven't faced anything in the field like that, but I know it's there, and I realize that I'm blessed to not have that experience. But what Aaron said about there's different factors in every newsroom, and a factor is area location. Like we look at maybe a newsroom in Youngstown, and Aaron and I may be one of two, but if you go to Atlanta, Texas, even if you go up the street in Cleveland, some of their newsrooms, they're full of Black people. So sometimes it's where we want to go, and maybe this area is not as attractive as other places. You have to look at where those HBCUs, where those schools that people can intern at these stations in their area. That's sometimes a determining factor of who gets to be in those newsrooms. And those mentors, if you have a Black lady who's been anchoring the news for years, they take another young Black person under their wing, and you get another Black young girl in the newsroom. So there's tons of factors, as Aaron mentioned.
All right, thank you. Now, Ernie, being a community staple in the, and I say that with honesty because
Wow.
because there's a thing that you in your column, what you wrote about, you're aware of not only Black but Latino, but in the Vindicator, because I was a sports stringer. They gave me all the losing teams, but I was a sports stringer, and I was the only sports writer on the Friday nights for high school football. How were you in the newsroom back in the day? Let's go. We won't give up 1986. We'll go 1987. We'll give you a year into the Vindicator. How did that go?
Well, for those who know me well, just a little on the side, I actually started at the Vindicator in 1976. None of you were born at that time. Very few of you were born at that time. We got a few. My friend Karen Guy in the back, she was there at that time. When I started at the Vindicator in 1976, there was only one other Black person in the newsroom. That was Leon Stennis. Leon Stennis would go on to be our religion editor at the Vindicator and worked at the Vindicator for many years before leaving and coming to work at Youngstown State University. But after Leon left, I was the only Black reporter in the entire newsroom. Bertram D'Souza came in 1979 at the Vindicator. Bertram is Indian by birth, but he was born in Africa, a point very few people realize. And so we were the only people of color in the newsroom for years. And so as I moved my way up through the Vindicator, and I started off the way most reporters start off, you start off writing obituaries. And so that's what I did for about 2 years. And then I worked my way up into covering what was known as the police beat. It was called Late Cops Obits. So I wrote obits in the morning, and then I covered the late cop shift in the afternoon, which was between 2 and 4 p.m. In 1979, the city editor at that time, which was Ann Przlomski, said, we're going to be moving some people around, and we would like to consider you as being our courthouse reporter. Now, the courthouse reporter beat at the Vindicator at that time was one of the 4 main beats at the Vindicator. You had police, you had politics, you had county government, and you had city government. So I was in line to be the first Black reporter to cover county government in Mahoning County. And I was replacing Bill Gibson, who had been there for 35 years. And I went on and did that from 1979 until 1986. And then I was replaced by that young lady up there, Karen Guy, who became the first woman courthouse reporter at the Vindicator. So kind of like passed the baton on. But during that time, there was no other Black reporter. And I remember Art telling the story real quickly, when I became the assistant regional editor, assistant city editor at that time, which would make me the first black person in management at the Vindicator in the newsroom. I remember getting a call from somebody who was very upset with a story that we had written, a surprise. And she says, I want to talk to one of the editors. And so I said, well, I'll be down in a second, and I'll bring you up and we can discuss it. So I go down, and the lady says, who are you? I says, well, I'm Ernie Brown. I'm one of the editors. I'm just the person that you just spoke to. And she just looked at me with this look in her eye. Now, she was Caucasian. And she did not know that there were any black people working at the Vindicator. So I've seen it come all the way around. But if we look at it from my point of view, going back to your original question, when I started at the Vindicator in 1976, there were 2 black reporters. When I left the Vindicator in 2019, when the Vindicator closed, we had no black reporters. The one we did have, John Goodwin, and some of you knew him, unfortunately died of a heart attack and passed on. And that's my story.
I got you. As we go into different subjects here, it's things that we're now dealing with, and it's, of course, COVID. We're dealing with racism, police brutality. As journalists going out to cover that, because does history repeat itself? Because, Ernie, you went through some things too. But I want to ask the panel, is that while you're covering these things, I know when I was in television news, some of my colleagues had their views that when the camera wasn't rolling, that, they're laughing so they understand what I'm saying, they had views that made me a little weary of their, how should I say, non-biased coverage of whatever they were going to cover. And I want to know, is it still going on, or is it a cultural thing? Because we always look at skin as this black or white, but when you really break it down, it's religion. Everybody here has a different religion, but we're all the same color. It's the same color. But it's a cultural thing. It's not a skin thing, because we all come from different cultures, different economical backgrounds. And so what someone doesn't understand can come into their reporting. And you don't have, I was just talking to the gentleman from the news, and it's, you don't have 3 hours for someone to explain their religion or their culture. You've got, as a news person, like 45 minutes or less to get what you need and move on. So do you feel like people understand from a cultural, fellow reporters, a cultural, their reporting? I kind of would, I'm trying to be nice about it, but is it non-biased? Is it bias or non-bias built on their, what they've seen or the cultural? And Aaron, you?
I would say this. I've experienced throughout my years certain terminology that gets used on camera in the newsroom and things like that, and I'm just sitting there looking at them like, what? I had a situation in one of my markets, not this one, be clear, not this one, okay? It was during our most recent election. We had a reporter. She was out reporting on our current vice president and referred to her as a colored woman on TV. And y'all can gasp, it's okay. We did too. And it was just kind of like, did she just call her a colored woman? And it just shocked me. And then someone was explaining to me, they were just like, yeah, you know, that's just kind of like, you know, how she grew up and what's around her. But that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make it okay. And I think there comes a point where you just gotta try just a little bit harder to get it right, or you know, because at that quick moment you can offend a whole group of people, and that's not what we're trying to do as journalists. We're trying to educate, inform, empower those who need to be empowered, and things like that. So you know, I guess in a nutshell, you know, try harder and come correct. So.
Yeah. Wayne, do you have anything that you want to expound upon on that?
Well, I'm gonna get this right. Hello?
There you
You
go.
did it,
I did it.
You did it.
and it's upside down.
Struggling. Okay. Yeah, Aaron's right. You do hear things, and like you said, it's not okay. And some people do look at it as like a white and a black thing, but you do have to look at culture. Like I've heard someone, not say it on camera, but after talking about their story, saying those thugs and something like that. And early in my career, it triggered me like, talking about my brother. You know what I mean? Because we merge those two, thugs, those type of terms. But then you look at their age, where they came from, and as Aaron said, we're not using those as passes, but you do have to realize what people have been through, what they've seen, and a lot of times they react off those things, just like when we were going through a lot of the police brutality stories. You would hear people in the newsroom say, well, they shouldn't have did this, or I need to hear the whole story first. And they don't realize how it hurts you to hear that. Because we all want to hear the whole story. It still don't take away from the fact that it's sad and that someone lost a family member. So being more sensitive to the minority in your newsroom is so important. But on air, I haven't seen anyone in our newsroom do it. We're not biased. We give the information just like we're supposed to. But yeah, when the mic is off, sometimes you get to hear people's opinions, and you're like, oh wow. But it's important. You have to realize what business you're in. If you're able to take the craziness that goes on underneath those Facebook comments, you have to have grace, and maybe this is just me, for the people that you work with. And maybe if it really affects you, just giving them a little teachable moment, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just have a little grace, Everyone wasn't raised like you. They haven't had the same experiences, and you have to realize that.
I think so. Mr. Brown?
One of the things that I tried to point out when I was working at the newspaper is we want to make sure that the playing field is always level. As journalists, first, our job is to make sure we get the information correct. We get the information reliably, on time, particularly newspapers, because we have deadlines like we all do. But you have to be consistent in that procedure. And let me give you an example. When I was at the paper, of course, we always want to try to run pictures with the stories. So if somebody does something bad, we want to run a picture of it. And I began to notice this, that whenever black people did something bad, we were always able to get the pictures. But when white people did something bad, burglary, arson, child molestation, and they were white, somehow we couldn't get that picture.
Or it was a friendly, nice picture of them playing in the flowers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I began to tell the police reporters, and I said, look, get the picture of the perp, just like you would get the picture if the perp was black. And for somehow, they thought that was like an eye-opener, instead of just something that would occur naturally. So as black journalists, we have to sensitize sometimes our white brethren in the media that we just want to be treated equal just like everyone else. If black people do something bad and want to put their picture in there, we don't have any problem with that. But when white people do something bad, they should get their picture put in the paper as well. One of the things that still frustrates me today, is that whenever there's a prostitution sting, you want to run the pictures of the women that were caught in that, but you never run the pictures of the Johns that were caught in that. Why is that? They were arrested, they were fingerprinted. Why can't we get that picture? So these are some of the things that we just have to be more sensitive to, particularly as black journalists. We just want to be given a fair opportunity to pursue our craft just like our white brethren.
And to bounce off your point, I think that's why a lot of black publications and news stations That's why we report on our stories more, because we know that other outlets are not going to tell the story at all, or they're just going to tell part of the story.
Correct.
And we want the whole story, whether it's a whole good story or a whole bad story. We just want our whole story told, period. And that I feel like that's why, Black outlets are, that's why we rank so high in telling our stories, because we know that these non-Black outlets won't do it.
It's very interesting. I was reading an article that said we show the picture of a black person in a mugshot. Someone doing the same crime a white person will be shown with their graduation picture or when they got married.
Yeah, and the headline will be a little different too, especially in mainstream media. If a white person, or let's say a school shooter or something like that, mainstream media, they will really just harp on this was a troubled kid, mental health, all of that. And then if there's a black kid, we notice it. I mean, the headline and the story is totally different. We're not really diving into, there's not a father at home. We don't need that. We just need facts. But you can kind of see when you read those articles how we kind of give passes to other races when they commit the same crimes that we do. I mean, like, wrong is wrong,
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's one of those things. I remember being in news and hearing when there was a black assailant or something like that, they would say a black man, and then for the same crime they would go, a man was arrested. And you're going, whoa, and they don't say, and rarely did they say Caucasian man, or even come out be bluntly and say a white man robbed the so-and-so store.
Okay.
And so it's that thing that we as an audience, do we correct them does anybody make a call or anything? Or do we keep on going along with that? Because it's hard, even in the news. Let me ask you this, the power of the newsroom. I've had people look at me, say something, and look at me like it was racial and they knew it, and looked at me like, you can't do anything. Yeah, go talk to the news director. Yeah, I said it. And I wonder that privilege, how do you, if you have something to say, do you hesitate or can you bring that up?
I hesitate. And that goes back to my original point at the beginning of this panel, the importance of having different groups reflected in your leadership, at your news stations, your newspapers, whatever your background is. You have to have a diverse group of people in charge, because if not, then situations like this will happen, where you have certain groups of employees who are scared to speak up when something happens. Just being honest, like, I may face a racial situation in the newsroom or outside of the newsroom on the job or whatever, and try to tell, a white, boss or manager, they're not gonna understand. It may be like, oh, that's horrible, I'm so sorry. But it's like, no, like, this is bad, The same way if it's, all male leadership and a woman goes to, her male boss and says, this situation happened to me, and he's like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. No, this is bad. So it's just, that's why I say it's important to just really make sure that your newsrooms are diverse, that they reflect your community, and then some.
I think one other question I want to throw out to all of you, some of the things that relate to the black community, maybe not as covered, and I'm looking at a couple of things here, whether it be health issues, such as hypertension and diabetes, sickle cell. Are those things that are given enough coverage? That, because in news it's sort of like you're trying to get everyone, but then there's going to be people who are left out with information that they may need.
I think the key to that answer to that question really goes to the pandemic, when it became obvious that black people and people of color were more impacted by COVID-19 than Caucasian people. And so the question is why? Why is that? What is it within people of color that makes them more susceptible to COVID-19? And you saw the black outlets go into that in depth to try to find out the answer to that particular question. Whereby the white mainstream media would just say, well, COVID affects blacks more than it does whites. And then that was the end of it. That was.
There's the full screen and you keep.
That was a full screen. They showed some black people, you know, on respirators, and then they cut to another scene, and then they went to a commercial. But in black media, we can go into it with a little bit more depth. Talk to people impacted by that. Could be, you know, pre-existing conditions. That's one of the things that we found out that COVID latches on to is pre-existing conditions. And in the black community, we have higher rates of hypertension, diabetes, and some of these are prostate cancer. And so therefore, the virus attacks us more. But if you did not delve into that to find that out, where would you be?
One question I'm interested in, the news is delivered in chunks and now clusters. And if you break down an hour, I remember this from a class, communication class, where they broke down the half hour of news. And you're basically getting, I believe it was 8 minutes, this is way back, 8 minutes of weather, 3 minutes of sports, and maybe 12 or 14 minutes of news. And that's including doing that. I want to kind of know, because when I was at the station, and I'm not sure if they do this for the rating period, where they do special reports. Are they still doing special reports where they go out and they do a series during the week, for the whole week? We're going to talk about this subject, or usually it's an investigative piece or things along that line. And at that point, it was sometimes they got a chance to delve into a situation. Is that happening now in media, especially you're looking at black? Is the coverage increase on one topic, or is it just for the day and then we're done to the next day?
Yes. You know, it's Black History Month, so.
Well, let's
Black
not say if it's not Black History
Well,
Month.
I'm just
Well, it's
saying,
February.
It's
so
February, so,
the ratings.
you know, that's when the black stories come out. I think sometimes during other ratings periods, it just depends on what the reporter kind of digs up themselves. But I think it's important for our newsrooms to take note of what stories have already been done and then look for what hasn't been done. You know, like, hey, we did this story, but hey, let's dig into this instead. So, you know, yeah.
Mm-hmm. How about you? Have you done special reports where you had where they gave you a segment? Where they gave you a segment and said, hey, we'd like you to do this, and maybe not black related, but just a segment that you were able to kind of delve into a little bit. Does that happen for you? Maybe at the...
That's not black related?
Yeah, or...
Due to my shift, I work the morning show. I'm usually doing live television, so I don't get a lot of those special report, you know, situations like a daytime reporter would. I do believe if I worked a different schedule, maybe I would, because I do get stories from people saying, hey, you should look into this, look into that.
Gotcha.
But because I work from 4 a.m. to noon, really can't get into all of that, so no.
Okay. Ernie, did you do any of those where you had to look at something in depth? I know you were kind of busy doing your editing thing.
Well, as an editor, we would get together and we'd have what we call daily newsroom meetings every day. And it was just basically we would go into this room and we would discuss what story we were going to go on A1, what stories we were going to go on B1, what stories we were going to go inside, and then we would talk about Sunday coverage and what stories we were going to work on for Sunday. And as an editor, we would go in and we would discuss all of these things, and I was always trying to bring up something that might have something to do with the black and the Latino communities, because obviously there's some issues in our communities that people might want to hear about and might want to read about. So we would try, well, of course, as Aaron said, Black History Month, it was full of Black History stories. So, you know, we had You know, we had to find this person, had to find that person, talk about how things were back in the 1920s and 1970s and do a comparison and contrast. But every once in a while, you'd have to, something would come across the wire, and for those that don't know, something would come across the news feed of the day, and we would try to localize that. For example, everybody is on edge about what is going on in the Ukraine. So simply we would just find somebody with Ukrainian roots in the area and talk to them one-on-one about how they felt about what was going on in their particular community. And we would try to do the same thing at the newspaper. But it was always pretty much, as Aaron said, for Black and Latino folks. For Black folks, it was February. For Latino folks, it was May, because that's Cinco de Mayo. So we would have it. And then, of course, there's Hispanic History Month, which is, I think, from September 15th to October 15th. So we would, you know, try to focus in on those things. But for the rest of the year, not so much.
Okay. Well, folks, we have a couple more questions. If you have some questions that you'd like to get ready, we're going to do a question and answer. We have those up there. We'll be beach balling those out. So I have a couple more questions. So if you have any questions, we're going to get that around for you. One question, and it probably particularly goes to Ernie, about the state of newspapers. We've got digital. Newsweek went to digital. Newsweek is a national, like Time Magazine, went to digital. Lots of papers are going to digital. Magazines are going to digital. Does that lessen the opportunity for Black journalists?
I believe that it does, because of the opportunities. You see, if you lessen the opportunities, you lessen the chance that more and more Black people are going to be involved in those opportunities, because most of the people making the decisions are not Black. So therefore, they're going to be looking at people that look like them and put them in those particular positions. In doing the research on this, Forbes.com pointed out that 2020 circulation, print and digital, of weekday newspapers was 24.3 million. This is for the entire country. And for Sunday papers, it was 25.8 million. A year-over-year decline of 6%. My generation is called the baby boomer generation, from 1948, I think, up to 1962. We are the last generation that read newspapers. If I was to challenge you right now, those of you who are much younger than myself, how much time do you spend with a newspaper? Do you even subscribe to a newspaper? Or when was the last time you read a newspaper? I don't want to see a show of hands, but I'm sure it would be very, very low. And that's what's killing our industry. We have a loss of readership, because as we die out, no one is picking up a paper to get their news. They're going on their phones, they're going on their iPads, they're going on whatever device that they have digitally to get their information. And many times, unless you're subscribing to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal website or whatever like that, a lot of those stories aren't well sourced. By that, I mean this. Somebody says something, and that's the gospel. Well, we in the news industry, we don't operate that way. We have to try to get additional sources to prove what the information you're giving me is correct before I put that information out there for the public to consume. But a lot of these websites, you just throw it out there and then, well, I read it on the internet, so it must be true. That's not necessarily the case. And so, as newspapers die out, and there are so many, quote unquote, newspaper deserts. Unfortunately, when the Vindicator closed, the Tribune had not stepped up and decided that they were going to, take hold of the situation. Youngstown would have been a newspaper desert. But fortunately, that's not the case. So you still have the Vindicator in some way, shape, or form, and of course you have the Tribune Chronicle. But there are a lot of counties throughout this country where there's no local newspaper. There's no local coverage. There's no one to hold local politicians to give an account about what they do. They do what they do, and there's nobody to challenge them. And that's what the fourth estate, that's what we do. We challenge the powers that be to make sure that they are representing we the people. But as newspapers, as my generation dies out, I don't have a real good feeling about where newspapers will be in the next 5 to 10 years.
And can I ask a question?
Yes.
Back home, I'm from Northern Virginia. I'm a Southern boy here in the Midwest. But there's a newspaper called the Roanoke Tribune. It's a black-owned newspaper. And when you were talking about how newspapers are dying out, you know, I'm noticing a lot of black-owned newspapers, they're having a hard time staying alive as well. But not only that, where some of these major newspapers or even regional newspapers, they're transforming into digital, these black ones aren't transitioning to digital and they're just dying out in general. Like, what is your reaction to that? Sorry, I had to ask the question. It's the journalist in me.
We're all here. We're all here to learn something. So
And state your name, please? No.
It's a challenge. I'll just be honest, I don't have the answer. First of all, I don't see a lot of young black people or people of color going into journalism. One of the things that Vindicator had me do during the time that I was there was I would go out to career fairs, the high schools, and even the college. In fact, we had several here at Youngstown State University. And people were going to, you know, that booth, and no one was coming over to the journalism booth. Very few people wanted to be journalists. And even when I would talk to younger high school kids, I said, well, why don't you consider journalism a career? And the answers scared me. It just basically frightened me. Here were some of the answers. Well, you got to read a lot to be a journalist. And I said, you don't like to read? No, I don't like to read. Well, what about being on TV? You see Ernie, Malaynia Spiva. No, you have to be able to talk like white people, and that's not me. I got to be me. I said, what do you mean you have to be you? So it's frustrating because I just don't see a lot of younger black people coming into our industry. Therefore, and it's the combination thing. You don't have a lot of black ownership of newspapers. More newspapers are coming together, being part of corporations and being bought out by other newspapers, other newspaper chains. So you lose that local connection, and you lose the impact in the community because you just don't have enough of us out there.
That's very short. Do you?
So,
Let me
go
get a point in here. One other thing that I kind of see is that a lot of journalism is done by the phone. I remember, and I'm not sure, I'm really dating myself, Dick Skelton. I'm not sure if any of you remember him as a reporter. I used to watch him very closely because he was old school. And he was the most efficient reporter I've ever seen. Because what he did was he walked over to the police station. And you did the same thing. Where you walked over to the police station, you got to know them. If you talk to journalists now, do they really know the people that they're covering, the people that they want to get information from? And I think that's one of the things that's sort of missing, is that personal touch from the journalist. If you call me up and I don't know you, you only get the surface facts. You see me face to face, you meet me,
Right.
you meet me.
The pandemic hasn't helped either.
Right, it hasn't helped. But before that, because a lot of times with the news, sometimes, not saying local news, but I'm just saying, people go on the assumption they got one source and that's it. I remember Dick Skelton, and there were other ones, and I'm just using him as an example. WFMJ to me was it still is a credible news source, because I know the people who are in charge and they do the same thing. You go over and you talk to them. You get there early and talk to them. You just don't come rolling in. And so that whole thing of journalism, when I've seen in younger reporters sometimes, I don't see that get your boots on the ground and walk. Aaron, go ahead. Yeah, it's okay.
No, I was gonna bounce off of your point when you're talking about you don't see as many like younger African Americans come into the business, and I think really it's because they don't see us on TV because we're unfortunately not getting hired. And then when you made the comment about like people saying like, oh, you have to talk like a white person, and how they, you know, I remember one situation that almost made me leave journalism was in my first station. A news director told me, literally, told me that my hair was too natural. And I was like, I mean, it's like it is now, with a little bit of apple curl in it or something. Yeah, a little juices and berries or whatever it is, you know. But I was like, my hair's too natural. Like this is how I naturally, it comes out of my head. I can't control it. And these are real things that, you know, we face in the workplace. And it's a lot of times some of these stations follow those old industry standards where the, you know, women have to have their hair, you know, boom, 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 guys cut, da, 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 da. And that's just not me, okay? You're gonna see me on TV, I'm gonna get my curl sponge out and I'm gonna roll this hair up. I'm gonna have my kente cloth towel on someday. You know, I'm just gonna be who I am so that the community who watches me knows that I am authentically me and I'm authentically, you know, representing them. So yeah, and hopefully, you know, a young kid will be like, oh, I saw Deane on TV, and then maybe I'll think about doing this, because that's what happened to me. I saw the two black people that were on TV, and I was like, look at Joy Sutton, look at Don Jeffries.
Right.
They're better. I said, I'm gonna go do that, and I did.
Well, my degree is in broadcasting journalism, so my heroes growing up, Ed Bradley and Max Robinson. For those who don't know, Max Robinson was the first black national anchor for ABC World News Tonight, back in the late 70s, up I think until 1983. Ed Bradley was my guy. In fact, that was my goal. Quick story, then we'll get out of it. When I graduated from Ohio State University with my degree in broadcast journalism, I said, okay, this is my plan. We'll go back to Youngstown, we'll work 2 or 3 years, work for one of the local stations. Then I'll make my way over to Atlanta and work down there, and then to New York, probably by the time I was 35, 36 years old, and then I'll be on, and then I'll have a mate. I'll be working for ABC, NBC, CBS, and I'm talking to you today. So but I have
You
fun.
made it. You made it.
But I made it, just not in that one.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, you sure can.
As Aaron was talking about his hair, I have the opposite where people would say, like, I'm seeing all these black girls going viral for wearing their braids on air. Like, why don't you wear your braids on air? And I said, I don't wear braids before I started. You know, so I'm not.
We have to have the autonomy to make that choice for ourselves about what we want our hair to look like.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. So
Don't get me started.
Right.
Let me turn this off.
But yeah, some people, they expect you to, you know, ride the viral wave.
Yeah.
I'm saying if that was something that I wore before I got on the news, of course, I'd be like, great, I'll ask my news director, can I do that? But, you know, this is me. But young people getting into news, you're right. I had someone tell me last week, like, I wanted to go into journalism, but it's just too much work. And you have to realize, as a minority, not just black, minority period, you may not always be chosen first. I'm someone who got into this business without an internship. When you go to the University of Akron and there's only 3 stations in the area that are taking interns, they might pick the names that are white names instead of yours. You can't give up. I got into this business after starting my own business. I had to start, I didn't have to, and I didn't mean for it to turn into a business, but I had a travel publication I owned before this because I wouldn't accept the no. And when you're passionate about something, don't accept the no. Know that someone's gonna see it, and if they don't, you have to see it in yourself.
All right, thank you. I tell you what, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna thank the panel. We're gonna go for something in Memphis right now, and I don't know, Mr. Dr.
Somebody
Earnhardt.
back there.
Yeah, Dr. Earnhardt is really big,
Yeah.
so I'm a little afraid that, oh,
That's okay.
see,
It wasn't bad, because it won't break. But you can hear me.
okay.
I'll try.
Okay, Alicia.
Hi,
That's why I wasn't a quarterback.
hello everybody. My name is Alicia,
Hi, Alicia.
and I went to school with Arthur a long time ago, so as you mentioned, we don't have to date ourselves. but
I'm glad you
it's a
know
long
long.
time ago.
I'm glad you
Just
know
one
long.
long.
Just one
One
long.
long.
My question is, and it's sort of related to what you mentioned, I have a two-part question. As far as the information that you have to report, how scripted is it? Because of the fact that some stories might be a little bit more sensitive than others. If it's race-related or anything that you might feel passionate towards because of the subject matter. So how scripted are the stories that you report? And number two, you mentioned about not many African Americans or minorities are interested in journalism. So are there any avenues, either now or into the future, that are being planned to mentor these young people, either at middle school age, high school, or even, later on in life? I feel bad that a lot of the black males and females that are reporters, they don't stay here very long. And I watch a lot of BNC, Black News Channel, programming, and there was a young man from here that I saw on there. He was worked at our news station here, and I saw him, and I said, wow, I remember him. So that's my two questions. How scripted are the reports that you have to give? And number two, mentorship programs that either you're willing to spearhead or something like that.
I can answer the first part. When it comes to like scripting and stuff, I've been, I'm currently a full-time anchor now, and I've been a reporter at MMJ before, so I can speak to both. So when I was a reporter, if I was out in the field, I probably had a notepad with some bullet points, and I was kind of going based off of those things and kind of just winging it. But if I was reporting in the studio, I'm on that teleprompter, especially if it's, like you said, a sensitive topic, because I want to make sure that I, one, don't get the information wrong, two, get sued, three, get station sued and lose my job, because the brother got to eat, And now that I'm an anchor, I am very much so like, we have the scripts, we go through them. If it's a sensitive topic, we make sure that multiple eyes are on those scripts. And especially even video, with crime scenes, we want to make sure that we're not showing, dead bodies or blood or gore, so we have policies in place to where, there are multiple eyes on the things that, we're reading or that we're showing you. So yeah, so it's scripted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a live reporter in the morning, so you guys know a lot of the terrible things happening at night into the morning. So that's all me. And as Aaron said, that's it. We really go off the cuff pretty much. You get those bullet points, what's important, what do people want to know, and that's pretty much it. Nothing's really scripted out in the field, but when you are in the studio, you really do have to stick to that. And your other question about people not staying in the area and mentorship and stuff like that, I get this almost every day. You're going to be out of here. When are you leaving? And that's from black and white people. They're like, I know you're getting out of here. I'm from here. And I didn't get to see a lot of black women on my TV screens. I was watching Cleveland News. I was looking for Ramona Robinson. I was like, Ramona? I was like, Ramona got it together. She is classy. She's like, I want to be her. And I think that's important for young black girls to wake up in the morning when they're getting ready for school and to see Malaynia Spiva. Sorry. But that's why I'm here. That's why I plan on staying here. Because I didn't get that opportunity, but I want other girls and guys to see me in them. Representation, I know it's like a cliche, now we say it so much, but it really does matter.
Just to follow up on that, when you're talented and you're black, they're usually going to come after you.
Yes.
And just like everything else, you use that as a way to advance your career. That's a career advancement. That's why it's difficult sometimes for young black talent to stay here. I use Michelle Nix as a perfect example. She was here for years, but then her time came, and she moved on. But look at the impact that she had on this community for her coverage. She was a very well-respected newswoman. She had great sources, and she was just a model of consistency. But sometimes when you're that good, you move on. Now, as far as mentors, it has to be, I think we need to work up a relationship with the school district to have people like us come in every once in a while and encourage young Black and Latino kids that, look, you can do this.
Right.
This is not rocket science. This is not something that is beyond your abilities.
Right.
So I think it has to be a collaboration.
And not everybody thinks that if you speak properly, it's right.
That is
Or
correct.
that should
Yes.
be enforced to let them know.
And-
Speaking
and-
correctly is not
And
speaking right.
that was my mantra when I was out there.
Okay, better pass this on to you.
Someone else back there?
Somebody up there.
Yeah, right back there.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm Mariah Spiva. I'm a junior here at YSU. This is a lengthy kind of explanation and question, so apologies in advance. But I'm a fashion major and a journalism minor, and I write here at her campus for Youngstown for like her campus online magazine. It's nothing official, but it's for college women. We write fashion reviews about shows, TV, for anything and everything from opinion, facts, whatever. And this is going back to what you said about digital journalism. Do you think that it would be better if people were more investigative when it came to digital journalism? Or is it just bad in general? Because times change every day. You can see it from 1920s to now, like just how times improve or even like just go down in the system. But is digital journalism necessarily bad, or can it become good?
I'm gonna answer that because that's what I did before FMJ. Digital journalism, ride the wave, find a need. My travel publication, what we did was people always said they were stuck in Ohio. So what we did, you would go to our site, it was an online travel publication. So you would go to our site, pick any major city, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, wherever. And we would give you all the events for the month. So we promoted staycations. If you wanted to go anywhere for the weekend, have a girls' night, a guys' night, you can find everything from an art show to a rock concert to a brewery. Find the need. What do you think people want in fashion and create that lane? Digital journalism is so special because you can really employ people from everywhere. You can get opinions from everywhere. I got to the point where I didn't leave my office. I had writers in every major city because of digital journalism. They were writing for me. I didn't have to go anywhere. Ride this wave. Figure out what the need is and ride the wave.
Thank you.
Let's go on back.
Can you hear me? My name is Tanya Thornton.
Oh,
Actually, I work for Youngstown Rand Early College, and Ernie is family. So, because I'm working with the youth, especially Black and Hispanic students, that's the majority of our school at Early College. What's some advice you can give me for those students that are interested in journalism and things, reporting and things like that?
I would say, what was some advice? It just expose them to the African Americans that are in journalism. That's the first thing. But also let them know that they have the power to tell the stories of the communities that they're in. You know, and that kind of goes based off of her point here. You know, she's from the area. She's telling the stories of her area, and she's kicking butt. You know what I'm saying? You know, people look up to her, and so yeah, I would say that's probably the first step, and then kind of see where it goes from there.
Okay. Are we at beach ball?
It's difficult for print because nobody sees us. Now, I was fortunate enough to have written a column from 2001 to 2019 when the paper closed. So my picture was in there every once in a while. But I would just encourage them, I said, look, whatever you want to do, if you should go in with an attitude of positivity, that you can do it, you're going to work at it, See, one of the things that I find very, very hard to accept is that the work ethic is slowly dying for some reason in our community. Not just in the black community, but in the white community as well. People don't want to work anymore. You see, that's a foreign concept to me. So you have to impress upon them, they have to work, they have to make sacrifices in order to be successful, and not to give up. Never give up.
That's so good. Yeah, just reminding them that it's not gonna come easy, and it's not supposed to.
That's
You
right.
appreciate it more when it don't. You have to work and learn some things, and I'm seeing the same thing. A lot of youth, as soon as there's a roadblock, oh, this isn't for me.
Right.
This must not be my calling. But you have to learn how to shift with those roadblocks. All right, if this isn't, catching on, let's try this. So really instill in them, the attitude of perseverance and not quitting no matter what. And I think one thing that we're not told in college, some schools, we all think we're gonna leave out of here and get a job. I was naive. I was like, oh, I got my degree, I'm gonna get a job. It's just like, no, that's not 1 + 1 = 2 in this, type of field. You're gonna have more no's than yeses. Yeah.
And, last point, and that there's so many positions that they can take advantage of in journalism
That's
and communications.
Right.
So they don't have to be a journalist. They can be an editor. They can be a photographer.
Producer.
A photographer's up there. Shout out. There you go.
John.
But there's so many different avenues that they can take advantage of, and
Right.
that they can use the skills that they're passionate about and still be a journalist.
That's correct.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Oh, sorry, y'all.
No, sorry.
Sorry, me again. We were talking about biased and non-biased opinions, whether it's on mic or off mic, and I was wondering if any of you have ever either done it or know someone who's done it that was a person of color, no matter what race, and that was biased or non-biased against, like a white person or persons that were being talked about on the news. Like, have you ever experienced, I guess you could say, the opposite of what we were just speaking of?
The question is if we have done it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Either if you or
yeah.
you know someone like you worked with that they were pretty much doing what a white person has done.
I think what she's saying is basically, correct me if I'm wrong, is that someone says something we're reporting bias?
Yes.
Okay, reporting something that their personal opinion, not the facts of the story, was in it. I'll give a quick example. I knew a reporter who said when Barack Obama started to get his speed, he said he reported Barack Hussein Obama. And he did that for almost 2 weeks. But in the news area, he would say, I don't like him. And that was, to me, a blatant show because it was reported that the news organization had to tell that person, because it got the story later, that they had to tell them he is being reported as Barack Obama, not Barack Hussein Obama. And that was putting out something that people, because at the time I believe Saddam Hussein was still going on, and so they were trying, the person was trying, I don't know if they were trying to do that, but they were trying to make a connection with him to kind of sway people. And that was a person who was reporting to people. Am I correct? Is that what you kind of mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
all right.
I've
I'm sorry.
I've
Please go ahead.
seen it too. I don't believe I've done it. I think during our not this presidency, but during President Trump's, I found a lot of black media. So just saying Trump, or the president. They didn't refer to him as President Trump, and so yeah, I've seen it.
That's a good point. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up.
Hey, Art,
Yes.
can I take executive privilege here for a
You
second?
sure can.
All right, so
You own the building.
I have just one quick question, and it has to do with our setting and being at YSU. So how important was it for you to have a black educator in your life? So when you were either in high school, but for our purposes here in college, for a journalism and media program, how important was that? And did you We find that we struggle sometimes, and we talk about the newsrooms around here. We also struggle at YSU too with representation.
I can probably count on one hand from kindergarten to probably college how many black or just non-white educators I had. And one of them was my teacher twice, from 6th grade and 10th grade. You know, Mr. Jefferson Jones, I'll never forget him. I'll never forget him. And we keep in touch today. I'm real loud, so y'all, you know, I don't need this.
I don't think so.
And so we still keep in touch today, but what made him stand out so much is that he was a black male educator, and there's even less of those. And he had dreadlocks, he had locks. And I was like, oh, this brother, he a brother, you know? And he was, yeah, straight up, you know? And it was just cool, and as you can see, I'm the age I am now, and I still remember him. And we still keep in touch because he made that impact, you know? I don't remember none of them other teachers, I'm sorry. Sorry to my Caucasian teachers. I can see y'all on the street, not even know your names, I'm sorry. But it was just that moment, in my life. I was just like, wow, I've never seen him before, anything like him before, and yeah.
I had one, and those who are old, I don't see anybody old, but there's a guy, a teacher by the name of Mr. Pegues, who ended up being the first black Youngstown school superintendent and the first black Warren school superintendent. He was a teacher when I was at Lincoln School back in the day. I think he might have been one of the only black male teachers at that particular time. And that left an impact with me. As I went on to the high school, I really didn't have a black teacher that really, that I could connect with. Most of my teachers, and I praise them to this day, they saw something in me. They were white, but they encouraged me to go on and pursue my dreams. Bill Terlesky, Ruth Shelloff, Martha Graven. I can remember these names as if they were yesterday because they saw something in me and they wanted me to go ahead and be successful. Another one was Denny Pernado, who was my teacher for the yearbook. I was one of the 2 writers of our high school yearbook when I was at East High School. So, but Mr. Pegues was the one for me.
Okay.
Well, I tell you what, I want to thank our panelists. Also, I want to thank the organizers of the panel who invited me to moderate, and you as the audience for your participation and being here. We really appreciate it. Another round of applause for everybody. Thank you very much.